like our presenter today. Wait, shall I do it, guys?
You should do it, Brian.
Sure, go, Brian.
Do you guys want lights on?
I'll hold my donut.
No, do the thing for coming to the business meeting.
I think you're cool.
You should actually do it, Brian. Get up there and do it.
Okay. It's fine.
I
Does
just,
someone hit start?
Can you start? You're good to go.
Alright, so today I'm going to be presenting to you about Proxmox virtual environment. It is used for Linux container virtualization as well as virtual machines themselves. So a few things you're going to learn about is you're going to learn the basics of Proxmox, the basics of virtualization, the fundamentals of Linux containers, virtual machines, as well as a little bit about cluster environments. So Proxmox itself is an open source platform running virtual machines or other appliances. It's based on a Debian Linux kernel, and it's developed and maintained by Proxmox Server Solutions, and it's very popular in small and mid-sized companies. Larger companies tend to opt for other server hosting companies that provide more like registered hardware support. So the two core products offered by Proxmox Server Solutions are Proxmox Virtual Environment and Proxmox Mail Gateway. The Mail Gateway is as it sounds, it's an email software. And the virtual environment is what we'll be focusing on today. So Proxmox Server Solutions is an independent company, so it has no other investors or shareholders outside of its general customer focus. And their headquarters are in Vienna, Austria. So brief history. It started as a self-funded open source company. In 2005, February to be exact, it was established by Martin and Dietmar Maurer. In 2005, their first product, Proxmox Mail Gateway, was released. And then in 2008, the Proxmox Virtual Environment, which I'll be focusing on today, was released. And in 2012, the second edition, Proxmox V 2.0, was released. And in 2014, Proxmox joined the Linux Foundation. So the first thing is installing Proxmox. I'll read the text up there, so I'll kind of walk through it. So the first thing you do is you write the image file to a flash drive. You can obtain the image file from their Proxmox Virtual Environment website. And you do the incredibly complicated task of hitting the automatic prompt for install. And depending on how you install, there are a few things that can pop up. The first one, you'll receive an error for no support for KVM, which is kernel-based virtual machines. And this generally only appears if you're trying to install it as Proxmox itself as a virtual machine, which we'll get to a little bit later. And then you get that nice end-user license agreement that everybody always reads because we're supposed to. And then Proxmox Virtual Environment. It's handy because it automatically will partition the drives to allocate space for itself and to then use the extra space for virtual machines. It can automatically detect hardware and use the universal drivers. And it offers a web browser graphical user interface. Then when you get to the setup where it will take, if there's an Ethernet plugged into the computer, it will automatically fill out the required IP information, which you can tweak as desired should the need arise. So after that, when you hit install, it runs through its functions. It's installed. The first thing you have to do is reboot it. And then the moment you reboot it, it will open up to a terminal interface. Welcome to Proxmox Virtual Environment, and then it will give you an internet link. That link is very important. That is the link you will follow to open the web user interface, which is where you perform most of the functions of Proxmox. So stepping aside, talk briefly about memory management. Proxmox is unique as it can utilizes a form of dynamic memory management known as KSM, or kernel same page managing. This process automatically scans all memory pages for all of its virtual machines that are running the exact same operating system. So the instance I used was CentOS. It uses, I think 3 or 4 virtual machines running exclusively that operating system. So it finds all those pages going to memory that are exactly the same and consolidates them. This can increase the potential density of your virtual machines by up to 300% without impacting your performance. Then the package manager, Proxmox Virtual Environment, like all Debian-based operating systems, uses APT for its package management, which stands for Advanced Package Tool. And the graphical user interface is the next one. Proxmox is terminal only for the host machine, so the device running the operating system. So my computer in there, the only way I can interface with Proxmox is through its inbuilt terminal. However, you can use that IP address that I mentioned earlier to connect into the web user interface, which allows for the manipulation and creation of virtual machines and containers. So stepping back, what is virtualization? In a basic sense, virtualization is the act of creating virtual versions of computer hardware to perform tasks. Proxmox utilizes quick emulator and KVM virtual machines, just kernel-based virtualization. It allows the application to utilize the computer's resources, but to view them as if they were hard physical devices. So in the existential sense, the computer runs the virtual machine doesn't realize that it's a virtual machine. It thinks it's human. So then you have the Linux container, which is a lightweight alternative to the clunkier virtual machines. They don't use a fully emulated operating system like a virtual machine does. They utilize the operating system of the host to perform the functions that are tailored to that operating system. And they're great for conserving CPU power. So back to the running Proxmox within a virtual machine. You can run most of its applications, especially like the containerized Linux systems, through a virtual machine. Like I originally installed it on VMware. However, it can cause an existential crisis where the computer, you cannot run virtual machines within a virtual machine. Physics does not appreciate it. So the optimal setup is a dedicated server, or in my case a computer, that is running, that's dual booted into Proxmox and runs nothing but Proxmox. And then you'll require an additional computer to access the web interface, which you will get to in the next one. So when you run it, you'll log in, you'll see that screen again. Enter that address shown, and you can access the interface, which brings you to this lovely home screen. So you won't be able to see this well, so I'll just kind of briefly walk through it, and then you'll be able to see it in greater detail once I've loaded it directly. So the first thing you have is the resource tree on the left. It shows your data center, which is the main hub, and then a drop-down tree, which shows your active and inactive containers and virtual machines. And then below that, you have the PVE directory, which contains all installed virtual machine templates and container templates. Then you have the content panel. This is the main chunk of your screen. This shows your resources like your disk usage, your memory management, CPU usage, and then the uptime, which I like to think of as disk usage, the amount of storage it's using on your hard disk or virtual hard disk. Memory usage is the amount of brain power the function is requiring at any given time. CPU usage is how fast those hamsters are running. And the uptime is the glorious time where things are not breaking. So then you have the log panel. This lists your recent actions that you directly initiate on the server. Think of this as like the history command on a Linux terminal. It shows everything you've done and in the order that you did them. And there's two special flavors to this. There's the tasks, which details every action you initiate, and the cluster log, which details every action that takes place on the cluster nodes. So Linux containers. In general, they're lightweight, and their drawback is that you can only use the Linux-based operating systems, so no free BSD or Microsoft Windows. You can run things like Fedora, CoreOS, all those things that are built on the Linux foundation. So certain commands and processes are not allowed in containers for security reasons. They don't want you to manipulate the resources of the host through the container. And it's protected by the AppArmor security software. So Proxmox Virtual Environment uses LexC tools for its containers. They use a special kind of adaptation, specifically adapted to work with Proxmox's libraries for different softwares. And this toolkit uses network and storage resources as a virtual machine, but it has the inbuilt overhead of a container, so it's fairly lightweight. So the first thing, the most basic sense, is creating a container. Once again, they're lightweight, they're less powerful, but they require less resources to maintain. And they're ideal for simple applications, so an operating system that performs one or two tasks when compiling reports. Think of them like a VM Lite or a diet virtual machine. So the first step, you navigate to the local PVE tab, which here, which I can show in greater detail later. And you want to select templates. And it'll bring up a predefined list that connects to the repository. You download one from that list. You can upload your own, which I'll show later with virtual machines. You select them from the list and download it, and it will appear under the template category. At the top right hand of the screen, there's a blue button that says Create CT, Create Container, which then prompt you for an ISO from that template list. You follow the prompts, enter the name, and then the resources that you want to allocate, so how much RAM, how many cores of your CPU you want to allocate to that process. And an interesting thing with the naming scheme, you can enter a name for an operating system. So say I'm naming it like CentOS. However, Proxmox will recognize it as virtual machine 101. It starts the scheme at 100, so the first one's 100, second one's 101, 102. So when you're referencing any machine, you won't use the name you assign it, you'll use the number that Proxmox assigns it. So for this container, say I did Fedora, if I install it, go through the process, it will appear under the data center tree. And it's currently inactive, so you will need to click the start button to launch the container. Now, virtual machines, this is the real chunk where Proxmox shines. Virtual machines are used to run multiple operating systems on a single device. They're more powerful than containers, but they require significantly more resources to manage. And Proxmox can virtualize pretty much any operating system. Windows, Linux, FreeBSD, you name it, you can put it on there. Your first step will be to upload an image file. So you'll navigate to that PVE tab, and instead of clicking the templates list like you did with the containers, you'll click the upload, which allows you to search your device and upload a file. All these files are uploaded from the device that's connected to the web user interface, and then it uploads them to the device running the Proxmox server. Make sure that that template appeared after it was uploaded, and then instead of clicking Create CT for Create Container, you click Create VM for Create Virtual Machine. Next, you'll select the ISO file. You'll follow the prompts, fill in the blanks, assign a name to it. It will receive a number value from the Proxmox server. So this VM, in this case CentOS, will appear in the data center tree. Then all that's left to do is start the virtual machine. So to interact with them, there's two primary ways you can do this, and both result in about approximately the same scenario. So the _console button, there's two of them. There's one here on the edge of the content pane, and there's another one up top. They do two slightly different things. These consoles can be terminal or GUI depending on the operating system that you're tapping into. The console button at the top of the screen can be used to create the console in a separate window. The one built into the content pane displays it in the content pane. You can only look at one at a time, whereas if you use the windowed one, you can do multiple. So let's move on to cluster stuff. Proxmox Virtual Environment Cluster Manager, or PVECM, is used to create the cluster. Cluster is a group of physical servers that are working together to share resources to run more processes than a server could alone. Proxmox uses the CoroSync cluster engine. Clusters can contain up to 32 machines, plus or minus, depending on network latency. Proxmox Cluster File System, PMX CFS, distributes cluster configuration information to all cluster nodes to keep everything on the same page. Clusters have several advantages over using a single independent machine. They possess a centralized management. You can edit any one node, and it will spread the information to the other nodes, and all the changes will be made simultaneously. The PMX CFS configuration files are replicated on all nodes using that CoroSync software. And there's an easy migration of virtual machines between physical nodes, which we'll talk about that a little bit, I think, in one of the next slides. There's fast deployments. It's very easy to add new nodes to an existing configuration. And you've got firewall and other security services that are available for the entire cluster. So creating a cluster. The first thing you'll want to do is SSH into the Proxmox console. I use PuTTY in my examples. You want to enter the command PVECM create, and then in brackets cluster name. If you run that, you'll want to make sure that it works. So you do PVECM status. This displays all cluster information. Just to kind of walk you through it, you'll see stuff such as the disclaimer, data was initiated, the quorum provided, which, an interesting note, instead of using a master node and then follower nodes or worker nodes, Proxmox uses a quorum system where each node is treated as equal and they all receive one vote. If you have 4 nodes, to achieve a quorum, you have to have at least 2 nodes online. If you do not have at least 2 nodes online to achieve that quorum, the entire cluster will switch to read-only, which means that you cannot write any new files, you cannot make any changes until enough nodes are brought online for the changes to be spread out. To add more, you do PVECM add, and then you enter the IP address of the cluster that you're adding to it. And you'll see them listed down here on the bottom if you have more clusters. It lists the ID, so its ID is 1, it has 1 vote, and then it lists the IP and local. That means it's the one that you're currently viewing from. So back in the web user interface, under data center, there's a cluster tab, which shows the votes needed for a quorum, whether a quorum is achieved. And once again, there's no need for a dedicated manager node. So I was unable to create a live working instance of a cluster with multiple nodes due to lack of physical devices. If you were to run the PVECM status after adding 4 more nodes, it would generate text equal to the following. So your expected votes, your highest total votes, and your quorum. Your quorum is 2, and you're currently receiving 4 votes, so you have met the quorum. The server will function as intended. So to list all nodes, you'll do the PVECM nodes, which in the instance where I have a single core, list the node ID and the IP address. And then to remove a node, this is kind of a tedious process. You'll first want to make sure that all virtual machines are removed from that node, so that no information will be lost when that node goes offline and they shut off the lights. So make sure all files are removed, and once you have run the PVECM del node and the node ID, so that IP address, you want to make sure that that node is never turned on again. If it is turned on, it may try to reconnect to its cluster and cause the entire system to crash, and the only thing you can do after that is reboot the entire system to a point where either that node had not yet been deleted or it had not been turned on. So it can cause a significant amount of data loss if improperly managed. So just a few commands you can do, and I'll run through these in a live test. There's PVE version, which displays the current working version, which should be 5.2 of the Proxmox software. PVE perf, PVE performance. It gets various statistics regarding how fast the system is currently running. QM config with the KVM number, so for Fedora instance, it would be 100 or 101. And then grep raised to memory. Shows how much memory has been allocated, so how much memory that KVM can use at maximum performance. QM list lists all KVM machines, their statuses, maximum memory and storage space available. Then PVE subscription allows you to receive information or activate keys for their product support, which Proxmox uses an open source software, so you can freely acquire their service software. However, they stay in business by offering a paid subscription for support and technical guidance with your servers. And this is another fun one. This is used to test the kernel same page merging that I mentioned earlier in the dynamic memory management. It's watch cat and then it sends it to a location where all the pages are consolidated, and it's used to see that KSM in action. And that comes to the end of the presentation, so now I'm going to open up the live instance. So once you go to the data center, it'll prompt you to enter your username and password. You can sign in using the root information.
We're supposed to.
No. It's a presentation. There you go. Right. Is that
Yeah.
cluster color is not real important at this time. This just lets you guys, can you all see words more or less?
Yep.
Can you read the words you can see? So if we go to the data center, the first thing we have is the summary, which shows the status of the cluster. The quorum has been achieved, one node is online, and none are offline. So under that PVE tab, you can see a summary of your performances. It's currently not using much CPU. It's using 2 to 3% of the 12 CPU cores. Its RAM's running at about 45%. It's using 7 gigs of the 16 available. And it can dynamically partition its hard drive. It's currently using roughly 8 gigabytes of storage space. You'll see Fedora, Ubuntu, and Windows 10. Those are kind of, the shape is darkened. That means it's online. So to bring those other operating systems online, simply click them, start, and it's going to fail to connect to the terminal because it's not currently online. You'll see a new task appear as it attempts to start it. It's successfully in the process of starting. I'm going to go ahead and run multiple instances of this CentOS that I've installed. And that should start bringing them online so that I can demonstrate that memory merging. Are there any questions at this point?
So basically, so like say you have a server, you would put the Proxmox on that server, put it in your server room, and then you would interface through like SSH. Are you like SSH?
You can SSH to access the Proxmox terminal on that device, so you don't need to go plug your server into a mouse and keyboard. Most of this will be done through the web terminal, so you can go to any browser, like Google Chrome, Firefox, Iceweasel if you're feeling adventurous. You enter the IP address prompted on that terminal, and it'll bring you in here. You can log in using your standard user information, and that's where you access the bulk of the information.
And can you modify like anything using the web interface, or like 95% of what you can do?
A solid 95%. The only thing you can't do is install packages directly to the Proxmox operating system. You can do that through the terminal. You can also SSH into any of the virtual machines that you are running. To do that, you'd simply go to the operating system. I'm going to use the CentOS's bait here. How well can you see?
That's pretty tiny.
That's pretty tiny, but I can.
Okay, I'll just read it to you. So that's entering the so let's log in. The IP route command will list my information, and the most important thing is the stuff here at the end. There's not much I can do to zoom it in. So basically it reads the IP address as 10.10.20.206 with metric 100. You want to remember that when you open your PuTTY software. I have pre-save on here to save all the time. Open, it will open up a terminal, which prompts you for your login. So if I were to log into this, it would have access to that CentOS operating system, and I could run any files or scripts that I had stored on there ahead of time. Some of the virtual machines will have GUIs like Windows or Ubuntu. Windows one, I have it already opened up to an email, so I can go through the hassle of opening my web browser, log into my virtual machine to check my email. Mostly they're used in business applications where you have reports automatically generated and running. Let me go ahead and start that memory command. That sometimes takes a little time to populate. Watchcat and location, system kernel, and KSN, pages underscore sharing. So that number there, you can't see it real well, but it's approximately 146,000 bytes of information have been found to be duplicates, so it consolidates them. So it's running, it takes the 4 or 5 memory pages that are duplicates, that are all identical, and consolidates them as one page being sent to the CPU, and all the identical results being spread back out. This cuts down on the CPU required to manage multiple instances of the same operating system. I'll kind of walk you through the brief instances of setting up an operating system. First thing, you go to your local PDE content. These are all the ones that I've already installed. It's the ISO images, the CentOS, Windows, and Ubuntu. I've already uploaded to the Proxmox server using the web interface. The container templates I've already downloaded for I go for Fedora and one for OpenSUSE. So I'm going to go ahead, create virtual machine. It assigns it a numerical ID since I've already used 100 through 107. 108 is the next one on the list. Then it's going to prompt you for an image file, and it creates a drop-down list for all of the ones that you've already installed, or ones that you've already uploaded to the server, I should say. Let it go with its defaults. RAM. It will automatically attempt to access the internet the host system is connected to. You see down here, it's appeared. It's currently offline, so it's not going to be able to connect to it. All you've got to do to bring that node online for the first time is hit start. And sometimes it can take a couple minutes on that first loading instance. Then you'll be able to use the console to access all of the install like you normally would. With CentOS, you select your location, time, language, keyboard layout, whether you want, what packages of software you want to come pre-installed on it, and all that fun jazz that you're stuck with any given operating system. There's some other things you can see, hardware specs, so you can see the keyboard layout that it's going to use. It's going to use default. The memory I allocated to it was about 4 gigs. It has access to single core. Your options, task history, you can see given tasks associated specifically with that operating system, which is sometimes easier to use than going through the general cluster log where you have all the inputs and commands being done on 10 different nodes. You can specifically target 10 different operating systems You can specifically target that virtual machine to see what it's been doing. You can also back up and save your files, or save your configuration files. So now if I go back up to PBE to look at the specs, I'm using considerably more RAM now that I turned on those other 4 instances of CentOS. I'm currently using about 11.5 gigabytes. Hard drive space has increased a little bit, but not really much. Virtual machines are definitely, like, when they're left in a running state, they're very heavy on memory usage compared to core CPU usage. Any questions at this point? Everyone take out your phone. I'll have a review for you.
Well, actually, I did have one question though.
Yes.
So like you've used VirtualBox.
Yep.
How is the performance of like a virtual machine from Proxmox to VirtualBox?
I found VirtualBox, since it's more in-house and less communicating with a distant server of the IP, it functions considerably faster on the latency. There's a few things, like once you start doing a server configuration, Proxmox will obviously excel. But if you're doing just a single virtual machine, you're usually better off using an in-house software, like VMware.
If you were to make a cluster on Proxmox and run a virtual machine, would that virtual machine like allocate resources from all the connected nodes, or how would that work?
Can you say that again?
Like if you made a Proxmox cluster and ran a virtual machine on a Proxmox cluster, do you know how that would work? Like would it take from sync all sync equals?
Yes, it would receive resource allocations from, generally the first initial resources will be taken from the node it's directly tied to. That's where most of its configuration files are. But if it starts to exceed the capacity that that node can put out, it will connect to other resources.
I'm not doing that.
It's not connected like that, it's not sometimes.
Jägermeister.
Wait, I like that cat picture of the Arrow 404.
I thought with the leopard. It's a big cardboard box. Just
Proof, no matter the size of the cat, it will always sit in the box.
It's true. It's so true.
So we got Joel 1 and 2.
Oh my god.
That one, Joel. Nathan, Nathan,
I'm not good.
where's your creativity? Be someone.
Can't find that. Oh, you can't change it.
Yeah, you can.
You'd have to log out, log back in.
Yeah.
It can take time.
Oh, I got you. There we go.
So we've got 5.
I got you.
I got Joel. I got the Joel down in. See.
Oh, no. So we have one more.
There you go. There you go, Brian. There's my creativity for you.
Thank you, Nathan.
Oh, Nathan.
Nathan.
I'm guessing that Austin is the one.
That one Joel.
We're waiting on player 6 to connect. Just a brief run through of the brochure. Me. 6. All right.
What's what is that? Come on.
11 questions?
Ooh, where are the server headquarters located?
Ooh, I like this question.
Yeah.
They're located in Vienna, Austria.
Really, 2 people are paying attention.
Austin.
have a one answer streak, guys.
Oh, gosh.
Stop. One of these things is.
I was wrong.
The other. Debian. It's based on Debian.
Debian
Might as well not leave, but
which
Joel-
is based on Linux, but
Second Joel is creeping up on him.
second Joel. Oh crap.
No, that's the.
I can say this one.
Yeah.
Wrong.
Yeah.
I got it right.
Proxmox Server Solutions was created in 2005.
Ah.
They released Proxmox Virtual Environment in 2008.
Hey, look.
I'm at the
you
bottom.
used 30. See what I did there, Frank? You used 30.
Proxmox, a member of the Linux Foundation.
You threw me off for a second.
Throw a no first. What does KSM in the memory management sense stand for? Answers are coming in a little slower now.
Dang, you had to make them all like literally the same. Yes!
Wrong.
Yes! Oh, I knew it was same page. Merging. Dang it! Yes!
Me is 30.
If I miss
I am
one
what?
question, I'm screwed.
Me is 30.
What package manager does Proxmox Virtual Environment use?
Dang, I know bad
We
dudes.
use advanced package management, same with all Debian-based operating systems.
It's fine, it's two of them.
Does the host device for Proxmox have a graphical user interface?
You guys better not get this wrong. Watch me get it
Oh,
wrong.
mine was wrong.
Good job. Which uses the most resources?
Yes, okay, okay. I was really worried about that question because I thought
Your
for a
first is gonna
second.
be a trick question.
Yeah.
I was like, the containers.
Question 9. What software is used to sync configuration files between nodes?
I figured out. Please let me get
I
right.
got this one.
Yes, yes.
Hurry around.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes!
I got it right.
That's right.
People are hanging on. That's a pretty good gap
Huh?
between 3
Me
and
is
4.
second.
If I miss one question, it's like, why?
What happens if a cluster quorum is not reached?
I think for a second.
I'm just gonna guess.
That's one wrong.
Yeah.
Wrong.
I'm still second.
You're below me, dude.
How many cat pictures were on the PowerPoint
Yes.
presentation?
Oh my god.
This is to see who was really paying attention.
No, there was 3! Dang
Yeah.
it! Ah! No! I knew there was 3! Ah! But I still won. How'd you win?
Me is second.
Me.
Joel two's third.
There you have it.
I got second place.
It was 3.
Now that I have all your attention and you're all excited again, now you get to watch commands be run.
There we go.
What?
Commands.
Control plus plus. Yeah. I think.
It does not work with Proxmox. I tried and there's no way to make the text larger. It's one of the biggest complaints about the Proxmox
Can
kernel.
you zoom in with the projector?
Is it?
There should be a zoom.
Is that doing anything?
Yeah, you're zooming in, very
Scoot it
sort
over.
of.
Keep going. Keep going. That's better.
Just keep going.
Whoever else uses that one is leaving.
Yeah, I think that's good.
I would just
That's
leave it
good.
there.
You
You
guys
can probably
will
stick
sleep
to
there.
it.
Yeah.
So, first up on that command list. So since this one is connected to a cluster of itself, PDECM nodes will list any nodes that it's connected to, which currently is the single node representing this machine. And list the IP address, should you want to direct SSH into that node. I'm not going to demonstrate delete node because that would tell Linux to delete itself and it will do it. PV version displays version information. So what you can see is 5.2.1, that is the current release. PVE perf, PVE performance, Proxmox Proven Environments and Performance. This will go through and it'll run a few stats. CPU speed, hard drive size, the read and write rate for the hard drive, which is coming in at 85.43 megabytes per second. The average seek time, find files. DNS ping connections. Sometimes like 86 milliseconds to the CIS lab. So let's see how much memory any given operating system has. We'll do this in command Q and list. See it all. So this shows the virtual machine ID. So for 100, that's the Ubuntu it's running. It's got 8 gigabytes of maximum memory and 32 gigabytes of storage on the hard drive. And then it lists the process IDs of machines. Next command will be the PVE subscription. This will lead you to support and enter keys. Currently, there's no subscription key as I have not paid the $100 to get a product support subscription. It'll list the ID of your server, so should you have to go in and do any tech support stuff, you can give them that ID and that will give them the exact hardware information of what they're working with. And then it's linked to the website to purchase the subscription. That is the long and short of it. Any last questions?
Show us the web host.
Actually was in.
I can show you the login to the web host. And then you'll enter the IP, which is 10.10.20.100, and then gateway 80.06. It'll warn you not secure because it's a self-signed certificate. You can go through and have it recognized officially, but it's usually not worth the hassle.
Ooh, and you mentioned like, so you can like SSH into like virtual machines or like specific nodes. So if I had like the IP address for a node, would I have to, like to SSH into that, would I have to go through the process of logging in to Proxmox and then go into the node, or can I just, like from my computer, SSH into
Yes.
that?
You will need to log in immediately after doing the SSH into the software, which is simply logging in as your user and your password. Even if the other one's already opened and logged in and you SSH into it, you'll still need to input that password. So to log into the web user interface, go onto that IP, enter root information. If I can enter it correctly. Typing during a recent. Bam.
Bang, it's logged in.
Bang. That's how you, yeah, first try.
So, does Proxmox just like hold all of your virtual machines in one spot instead of having to like create multiple ones, like virtual machine?
Yes, any cluster that you connect to, or anytime you connect to the web user interface, you can access all of the virtual machines you have installed. The machines, like the hard copies of that machine, the hard copy of the virtual machine is written to the web node that is currently hosting it. Which in this situation is the computer in the lab at the moment. Any other questions? All right.
I've got one, after the work that you put in to do this presentation, do you believe you'll actually use this in the future? Like to use other options better?
If I had to have a collection of virtual machines running, I would definitely go with Proxmox. I mean, just not because of the understanding bias with it, but it does work well for hosting a small number of virtual machines. If you're going to run hundreds of virtual machines, or if you need to only use one, there's usually better software out there.
There's also the application cluster.
Wouldn't this be like a really, really cool thing, because you could put this on like, if we ever had like a server, and this could be like, it'd be like our new VM server, and it's really easy to use.
Absolutely.
It's really cool.
You gotta see your project idea there, Brian.
I know, right?
So did you have any
How many
issues seeing some of these before you?
Like, logging in and anything?
Not generally, as long as I remember what password I use, what user account. The biggest issue was I originally tried to run it as a virtual machine inside VMware, which you could run the Linux containers, but you would get issues whenever you tried to launch another virtual machine.
Did you ever, you said that you didn't have enough machines in order to make your
Yep.
cluster. Did you ever get a chance to work with two machines together?
No, not with the Proxmox software.
Are we that short on machines, we don't have any extras?
I tried to install the software to a couple of other machines, but the hardware wasn't behaving. I couldn't get in to enable the KVM stuff. So that's a pipe dream. Thank you. Please grab some more food on your way out because I don't need to eat at all.